If you remember the last time we were here, you started to talk about a stressful situation at work. And I would like for today's session, if we could just continue along that path and see if we can come up with some solutions or some better ways to deal with it.
Okay.
The first thing I would say before we begin, though, is that everything you tell me is confidential.
Right.
However, there are some exceptions. If I think you're going to harm someone else, or if I think you're going to hurt yourself, then I'll have to stop and tell the authorities.
Okay.
Do you understand? Okay, great. Okay, so tell me again about your situation at work.
Well, there's a couple of people at work. One's my boss, but she's a nice lady and she knows what she's doing, and I know she really cares and everything, but she micromanages a lot. I mean, like, if she's in the building, some of us are just so stressed we almost have anxiety. And sometimes I can feel that too. I mean,
like there's an extra pair of eyes on you.
Yes, like she's always watching. She's always like, you're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. And if you don't look like you're busy enough, she's asking what you're doing. And the way we do things is that if we don't have a visit going on, we're not on the clock and not getting paid. But if we're sitting there waiting for the next visit, she'll still expect us to be working, even though we're not on the clock.
I see.
Which is very frustrating because you can't just say, "Hey, Catherine, I'm not working right now."
It's a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
How do you normally deal with that stress?
Mostly I just try to, bite my tongue and not do the eye rolls and things like that where anyone can see me, and just try to let it go. But it's just, I've been noticing more and more that it's getting to me more and more. And, I like my job because, I feel like I'm really doing something good. And every now and then you have a kid or a parent that's really like, we're so glad you guys are here. But I don't like the stress that I get from the boss.
That's understandable. How would you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your stress you feel about your job today?
It's probably about a 7.
About a 7? Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty high. Let me ask you a question. Tell me about the times you don't feel stressed about your job. When is it not stressful?
Well, whenever the boss isn't there.
Oh, okay.
Or whenever she is there and I'm busy doing something and she knows I'm doing something, and so she doesn't bother me with it. With what are you doing, or can you do something else?
What do you enjoy about your job?
I enjoy, helping the kids and the parents, because, these are, parents that aren't going to be able to see their kids any other way. So they're getting to see them in a safe environment, and, sometimes helping, the kids, just have a good visit with their parent, and they don't have to have any fear that mom or dad's going to get mad or they're going to do this or that, because we deal with a lot of issues. And, I like the feeling that I get from helping them and being there for some of them.
So you really like being in a helping profession.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the field is the right fit for you. It's just that your supervisor is a little hands-on too much.
Yeah, she micromanages.
She's a big micromanager.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question. This is kind of a miracle question, basically.
Okay.
What would be a perfect day like at your job?
I think if Catherine were to let us if she were to see that we can do the job and we don't need to be micromanaged, that would be great. If she saw, she came in and saw that we're all working, we're all doing what we're supposed to, we can do these things without making mistakes. Honestly, there's a lot of times we make silly mistakes, but it's because we're so nervous that we're going to make a mistake that we mess something up. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or just, you think you're going to make a mistake or you're nervous about it, and then you end up doing it.
So you kind of feel like she should trust you more.
Yeah. Like she doesn't really trust us to be able to do the job, even though we do know what we're doing.
And so you feel like your coworkers do a good job when she's not around.
Yeah. I also feel like the rules are constantly changing on us of what we should do, and if we had a set standard of rules, it would be a lot easier because then everyone would know exactly what they need to do.
Okay. So it sounds like she needs to basically set some rules down, abide by them, and then kind of back off and let you guys run the show.
That would be great.
How I want you to try maybe some new coping skills. It sounds like you're doing a pretty good job so far because you're doing well in your job. Have you gotten good performance evaluations?
I mean, there's been a few times that I've kind of not necessarily lost my temper, but haven't been as patient as what I should have been in situations, and I feel like some of that is coming from like not feeling like I'm being backed up by the boss, whereas the other people I work with, are right there and supportive, but I feel like, oh well, I'm doing this wrong, and whether no matter what I do, I'm going to do it wrong. If I make this decision, it'll be wrong, but if I made the other decision, it would end up being wrong too.
Okay.
But then I guess that kind of goes back to the whole ambiguous rules thing.
Right. You need to have some clear standards.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think today we've really gotten to the heart of the issue and talked about some problems and how you're dealing with them. I'd like to give you some homework, if that's okay, for our next session.
Sure.
The next time, what I want you to do is I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to rate how you feel going into work about how stressful it is. And then maybe after a couple hours, write that number down again. And then envision yourself in a perfect situation. Try to make some distance between yourself and the situation.
Okay.
And then at the end, rate how you feel on 1 to 10. And then you'll come in and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Does that sound good for our next session?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to work on that. I think you've gotten off to a good start, though. And I think we've really made some progress today.
Okay.
All right, great. So I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, what I'll be doing now is giving a critique and kind of an after session report on what you just witnessed. I want to give you an idea of what I was thinking and discuss the specific techniques that I used within that session. Now, the first thing you probably noticed was that I didn't formally introduce myself, and my client didn't introduce herself. Now, the important thing to remember is that this isn't a first session. As it says in our rubric, we're supposed to have a beginning, middle, and end. And I wanted my beginning section to reflect that this was the second session. That's why we briefly talked about our previous session. So I didn't think an introduction was necessary in that sense. I did include the confidentiality statement because I think that's very important, and it's important to even remind people of that. So that's why I did that. The early part of the session is basically me information gathering. We've talked in class about how silence is important sometimes from therapists, and I felt that on my part it was important for me to be quiet and simply listen to what my client had to say, because it seemed like she was distressed and that she had a lot to say. I mean, there wasn't any pregnant pauses. She spoke through the session pretty clearly. I thought, things seemed very stressful for her, so I opened things off by asking a coping question. I wanted to kind of turn things in a positive direction, and I think they slightly did. You can notice a slight tone change, I think, in the session. Then I went to scaling because I wanted her to rate how distressed she was and kind of give it a number, a concrete number, rather than having kind of free-floating anxiety out there. And she did that. I thought that was a very important piece of information. Kind of moving again in the positive vein, I did ask about the exception question, try to get her to focus on what things could be like there in a positive way. I was waiting on the miracle question. I didn't want to do that immediately because I think that's a very important question. I wanted to save that for later. And after she got done with the exception question, I tried to keep things positive by putting in the miracle question. And again, she kind of pulled it back in, that question in, and answered it by talking about her supervisor, but maybe her supervisor wasn't there. So it's clearly there was some conflict in that work situation between herself and the supervisor, and as she said, between maybe other coworkers and the supervisor as well. I also, basically throughout the session, I know we have that section in our class, in our notes, called time out, where you're supposed to stop things and praise your client. What I did throughout was I tried to restate things and put a positive spin on them. I don't know if you noticed that, but throughout the session, I would take something she would say, repeat it, and then put a positive view on it, or a positive, I guess, my own positive way to look at it. So I was trying again to subtly shift her in the direction, in a more positive direction. Also, in terms of accolades and work, I gave her some homework because I wanted her to think about that rating system from 1 to 10. Because I wanted her to look more scientifically at her problem and to rate herself to see how she feels during the day and at the end of the day. And I thought that would give us something to talk about in the next session, how her ratings go up and down. I did sense that she was a little more positive at the end of the session than the beginning of the session, so I think that the techniques worked. Now, there are certain directions I could have gone in maybe that I didn't do, and in retrospect, maybe I should have. I could have asked her more details about her boss. I could have asked her, have you tried talking to your supervisor about your issues? Do you feel safe in doing that? Is that something that's proper in the workplace? I could have done that. I could have focused more on her action in the workplace, but I didn't do that. I was just trying to listen to her perspective and how she views things. So I could have gone in other directions. But overall, I thought it was a positive session, and that I was able to demonstrate several techniques, and hopefully that helped the client.